Hey everyone, it's Daniel Elwood and Robert Johnson, and we are the Last Nighters. And Last Nighters can be found on the Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction. We're going to be talking about our Groundhog Day movie this year, and it's not Bill Murray. It's going to be Tom Cruise in Edge of Tomorrow. And our guest is Jack V. Lloyd of the Voluntarious comic, as well as many other projects. We were talking about in the pre-show content, how many things he's got going on. He's running a little bit ragged, but things are going really well. Oh, by the way, this episode 109 of the show. You can find those show notes and everything at lastnighters.com/109. But Jack, welcome back to the show. You've been our guest for Schooling the World. And then what was the other one? We talked about Wolverine, Logan, and Spider-Verse. So you are a friend of the show. We are a friend of you and your work. We are the centerfold. We are the eye candy in one of your creations, 3 years running.
As you can see here, very beautiful. Last night, look at that amazing artwork. I wonder who made that. Amazing. So yes, thank you for your support. It came out great. So it's awesome to be back, and it feels good to just see your guys' growth. And I'm sorry you feel a little bit sick there, Robert, but I'm happy to see just how much progress y'all have made, and I just love seeing all the transitions you have for your show, and just seeing the growth over the years, just like done more stuff with comics and things like that. But it's really awesome to just take a moment to appreciate all the hard work you put into developing your program and like developing all the aesthetic to it. It's really cool.
Oh, thank you for the kind words. I don't feel worthy, but we do appreciate it. And your comic, you have that at volcomic.com, so people can order that up. And then will you be doing another one this year? So you'll have another campaign to support that?
Great question. So yes, volcomic.com is where the comic universe is. And I just did a little bit of retooling on the website, cleaning things up, adding some things. So if you visited before and you didn't check everything out, there's cool things to check out, little insights to the universe. This year, I am not sure if I'm going to do a campaign yet. I was currently testing out this thing that hasn't really been successful, so I'm kind of just playing with it. But Subscribe Star, it's kind of like Patreon. Basically, it's a way that people can support creators and help them produce more work. I launched that just to see what support we can do on a rolling basis and kind of have pages come out on a rolling basis instead of wait for a campaign. Haven't seen any support from that yet, but it's all good. I've actually still been making pages just because I want to, and I was so happy with the success of this past issue, and it's so good. The quality is so improved. I'm like, okay, I just got to keep going. And so on there right now, there actually are new pages already there past this Origins 3 issue. So I probably am going to end up doing another campaign eventually. I'm just not sure if I'm going to do that later toward the end of this year as a little bit of a different thing, just because I'm really busy with Red Flag Reality right now. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's never ending. It's like a life project hobby thing. So it's just never ending. I'm just going to figure out which means I go toward and when I'm going to do it. So.
All right. Well, that sounds good. I look forward to being a part of that one as well, if we can. And then you mentioned Red Flag Reality, which I understand is your latest project. Can you describe what that is, the elevator pitch, and then where people can find out more about that?
Sure. Thank you. Appreciate it. So Red Flag Reality is kind of this project, like a film project, you could say, where Philosopher and I are trying to push back against the gun grabber propaganda. And when I'm talking about gun grabber propaganda, we're talking about Moms Demand Action, March for Our Lives, Sandy Hook Promise, these major organizations that have millions of dollars to produce all kinds of viral media and professional videos to basically say that nobody should be allowed to own a gun. And we saw the writing on the wall with red flag laws, which, if you're not familiar with those, it's just laws that allow the police to just take your guns without any kind of meaningful due process. They have a petition with the court. You're not even allowed to be there. It's an ex-party proceeding, and they have a lowered standard of what allows them to basically come and take your guns. And we saw that was going to be a huge thing in 2020. And so we got ahead of that and went ahead and produced this kind of viral campaign and messaging to gather support to produce some counter films and shorts against these big or I should say, well-funded and well-produced gun grabbing videos, especially by Sandy Hook Promise. And they had several videos that came out in the past few years that were pretty well done. Again, they're in terms of production quality, they're extremely well done. And we just want to knock those down and take their messaging and shove it right down their throats. So we've been pretty successful so far. I think we're just about 30. We have 33 days left out of a 60-day campaign. We're about $16,000 raised so far. We have the support of a major gun rights advocacy organization, Firearms Policy Coalition, and they're awesome. And they do a lot of great stuff, suing in the courts to fight back against gun grabbers. So we have also David West as our cinematographer, who's produced a lot of great content debunking gun grabber myths and doing things that kind of promote gun culture. So he's excellent and volunteers as well. So it's a pretty big endeavor, but of course, we're prepared to take that on because we have the experience, the know-how. So that's been the main focus right now, just because it's such a serious thing that's coming up with all these different red flag laws being passed in various states, that we're like, if we don't do something now, it's that level of serious that it could be a true tyrannical takeover if it's not stopped. So.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And where can people find more information about it? There's our website that they can go to, and we will have, of course, on our show notes page at lastnighters.com/109.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Redflagreality.com. On there, you can go and navigate directly to the Indiegogo. You can see the pitch video and some information about what we're doing. And it's just, it's really come to a head at this point that if people don't actually do something, we're going to see like real democide. We believe this to be like the actual, like when people said, oh, well, how did, Nazi Germany get to where it was? The red flag laws are the Nazi Germany precursor. This is exactly what you would expect in a totalitarian regime. It's a unique thing, kind of like what civil asset forfeiture was for, police stops. Red flag laws are essentially the ultimate tool of tyranny and way more direct violence than, some of the other lingering things like the NSA and, TSA and Real ID. This is something that's, kicking down your door level. So it's that serious. So we're trying to stop.
Right. We've seen that with the upstate New York guy, the Patriot guy who had the SWAT team come in at him. And then also Virginia, lots of stuff going on there. And it makes me wonder, we kind of maybe missed the boat here on our Tom Cruise movie of choice. Granted, it is for Groundhog Day, but Minority Report would have been perfect in tie-in with the red flag law because it's the pre-crime stuff.
That's funny because I actually did rewatch Minority Report within the past like 2 months. So that's actually kind of funny. Yeah, it's like that. There's no psychics, of course, saying who should be have their guns confiscated, but it's in some ways it's that flimsy, right? Like it really is like that flimsy. Already in Colorado, there was a woman who there's a police officer who shot her son because he had a knife and he was coming at the officer, and she red flagged the police officer. Now again, police officer issue aside, it was just showing already how it's being used as a revenge tool. And it's going to definitely be amplified in that means in California, Colorado, and other places where people can just, submit a petition if they are your coworker, or they say, oh, well, we have a relationship somehow. And it's really quite incredibly scary how dangerous it is and how readily it's going to be used to persecute people.
Yeah, scary stuff indeed. Well, I think that's a very worthy project, and people can check that at redflagreality.com. That's correct?
Yep, redflagreality.com. It's all there. Everything you need to see and hear about it. So,
all right. Well, thank you for telling us about that project. And we will get into our movie now with the Google description, how we start off, and I'll go to Robert for your reaction. Edge of Tomorrow came out 2014. It's a sci-fi action movie, 1 hour, 53 minutes, PG-13, 7.9 IMDb, 90% Rotten Tomatoes, and 71% of Metacritic, and 94% of Google users like it. The description is, when Earth falls under attack from invincible aliens, no military unit in the world is able to beat them. Major William Cage, played by Tom Cruise, who is an officer who has never seen combat, is assigned to a suicide mission. Killed within moments, Cage finds himself, spoilers everyone, killed within moments, Cage finds himself thrown into a time loop in which he relives the same brutal fight and his death over and over again. However, Cage's fighting skills improve with each encore, bringing him and a comrade, played by Emily Blunt, ever closer to defeating the aliens. Release date of May 28, 2014. The director is Doug Liman, who is of Swingers fame, and the box office with $370.5 million on a budget of $178 million. So just over a double there. Robert, your take?
Well, this is a fun hero's journey story. It's the classical, not a hero, learns, trains, becomes a hero story. And it's definitely I'd say it's a fun kind of sci-fi action adventure time travel movie. I think it falls apart upon, strict analysis of motivations, especially of the alien invaders. But overall, it's a fun popcorn movie. I'm surprised it's not more, I guess it's fairly well received, but it wasn't like a huge blockbuster at the time. I mean, I don't remember it making very big waves. It didn't I guess it's a fairly niche. I mean, I don't know if you can make a sequel to this sort of thing. Maybe you could. I mean, who knows? They made enough money, they could have come up with something. But of course, it's what was it? Based on a Japanese story called "All You Need Is Kill," and then it was alternately titled "Live, Die, Repeat." I think these are all excellent titles. But it's a strong, fun action movie. I think we can get into the weeds, though. It brings up some interesting points that I think I want to make about the military and what they think of their own soldiers, and we can get into that. But and then of course the parallels of World War I and World War II that this movie likes to play with. But I don't know, it is good. I know you liked it.
Yeah, spoilers, everyone. I said that in the pre-show, which is available for our Patreon supporters, lastnighters.com/Patreon. I spilled the beans and said that I did like this movie, enjoyed it very much. What is your response, Jack, to the Google description and Robert's opening comments?
I mean, I agree overall. I saw it when it first came out, and I really enjoyed it. I thought that the action was satisfying and that the character development was fun. It's hard to not enjoy a lot of Cruise's movies. Like, he just plays that kind of intriguing character that you can't help but get wrapped up in, even though he's a big Scientologist in real life. So there's always that fun part. But I thought that the plot elements were engaging. The idea that the blood from the aliens caused him to repeat that loop, and I think taking the Groundhog Day style concept to, battle with lots of, big action and crazy aliens and suspense. I think that's a lot of fun, even though like the base concept might not be like absolutely unique. I think that it's still really engaging and definitely something that is right up my alley, loving, superhero comics and like creatures and other stuff like that. So.
Yeah, very good. And I did like that element where he repeated it so many times that he just became expert level. It's like playing a video game over and over again, the same level. And then you just get so good at it. You can do it really, really quickly. Like those quick run throughs that people do. Like someone can finish Super Mario Brothers in like 11 minutes or maybe less. I don't even know. I'm sure you can find a YouTube video on that. But that is very reminiscent of Groundhog Day with great Bill Murray. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, and this is like a little bit of a somewhat personal anecdote, but when Tom Cruise is like trying to convey to people like, hey, this might sound crazy, but this has happened before. I've been, experiencing this. I've been telling you guys, we're going into a trap or whatever. The first like 7 or 8 dates with my now wife, almost everything that I said was, this might sound crazy, but this was back in my, libertarian, like evangelical phase, the Ron Paul stuff. And so it was it was my way of being able to like say whatever I wanted and also kind of test to see if she was very receptive. And thankfully she was. And now, it kind of worked out. We got kids and everything. But one of the interesting things, and I don't even know if this is like a hot topic, but when I first watched this years ago, it didn't stand out until watching it again recently. But the the alien invasion, and Robert, you talked about their motivations. I feel like they're like just like a virus. Like there's not a whole lot of thought going into it, though they do have a very sophisticated ability to respond to threats, and because they have the ability to do the time loop, they're also improving their response to things. So, gosh, what the heck is my point?
You don't know, Daniel.
Could tie it into Liberty somehow. You're like, every year, you keep trying to tell people the same thing about this president. I swear, they call themselves Republican or Democrat. It doesn't matter. They're going to still expand the state. They're going to still bomb the Middle East. And you're like, I swear, I've seen this before. I've seen this timeline.
Right, yeah, and as long as their guy's in power, it's no big deal. But it's the other one doing the exact same thing, then all of a sudden it's never whoever. I think maybe I'll do that as that might be a good T-shirt for Trubster.com there, Robert.
Yeah.
One point I wanted to bring up was, due to the alien invasion, now there was this common enemy. And so they almost fell under this, we're going to now work together and have this united defense force. So like this world government kind of coalesces in response to the alien threat. And I wonder if that's how things would actually work, in reality here. I know.
Go ahead. I'm just going to bring up. You've heard Alex Jones talk about the fake alien invasion plans of the U.S. government. Daniel.
It's been many years since I heard any Jones, but I know Krugman said that would improve the economy quite a bit.
Well, of course it would. Yeah, of course, because there's nothing better than fighting aliens. But yeah, Jones has been talking. I don't know what his evidence is. He's really terrible about ever providing any evidence. But
he's got the
he says a lot.
It's admitted.
He's got the documents. It's there somewhere, and he likes to talk about how that the U.S. government has fake alien invasion, and then that would lead to world government, because that would rally everybody around it. And then a lot of the Hollywood propaganda is to desensitize us to it or something like that. I don't know exactly how it all works in his head, but that's what he likes to talk about. I think it was what you're kind of talking about. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not tied to Jones specifically, though I'm sure it does come at least from a similar path as him. But you've heard of like the Amero and things of that ilk.
Sure. The North American dollar or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I'm not sure like where that stuff all came from or where I became aware of it, but it is in that similar vein. And I do think that there have been calls for this, especially going back to like the 1960s, like, hey, there's certain crises that are big enough, like the climate is the one of the ones right now where we need to have a world government. And so they're trying to like make these things fever pitch, catastrophic, everything's dangerous. You got to like look to government for your solution. So that's how they're kind of promoting all of this stuff, trying to get it to go through. And I think that ties a little bit into your project, Jack, with the red flag reality, because a lot of people are touting all this rampant gun violence, but I think the statistics bear out that the United States does not, in fact, lead in mass shootings. It's actually been a distorted and misrepresented figure, and it's actually far safer in the United States than in most places.
Oh yeah, that's definitely true. In terms of, that there's, of course, many other countries, there's much higher murder rates and other types of mass shootings and things like that. I was going to say, if you want the whole history, because you mentioned Alex Jones and the government stuff, I can definitely dive into that a little bit to tie it to the film, because as you may remember, Voluntarist is actually about that topic. The comic literally is about the government, having a false flag to like unify and scare people into, you could say, martial law / mass tyranny. And what you're talking about in terms of what Alex Jones and things like that speaking to is that historically the call for world government has been a longstanding thing from the League of Nations, which failed, of course. And then, of course, to modernity with the UN and the United Nations. There have been certain key power players, historical families who want to have global government, because if you have global government, you could have, of course, the greatest amount of control. You have thrones from where to you can actually implement plans for control. And there were actually states that had a convention, as United States, that they voted on whether to join a world government. Again, this was on the heels of the world wars, because the whole idea was like, oh, okay, well, how are we going to stop these world wars from happening again where so many people are dying? They're like, well, if we unify people under global government, then we can stop these world wars. And of course, that was the mantra that, first, again, League of Nations and then later United Nations. So this idea of like trying to scare people into a global government is an old trope, but it's a true trope, and it's very historically documented, and it's basic stuff in terms of many high schools talk about these things in terms of the development of the League of Nations that didn't go through, and then the United Nations. And I would say that, in my opinion, tied to the comic, reality plus comic, and then tying to the movie, I do think that is the ultimate goal, is to conjure a way to scare people enough into a unified global government system. And I do think that an alien invasion styled thing could be that catalyst. And for me, what I see as most plausible in that realm is has already been done and experimented on. This is happening both in government labs and in other countries, clandestine labs, is working on human animal hybrids, chimeras. And the idea there is to see how far you can, take genetic, or I should say epigenetic here, evolution. And if you have the right level of deception with advanced technology, and you couple that with, biological engineering, you can definitely orchestrate a seeming alien invasion attack. It is definitely within reason. And people who are like, well, how would anybody ever come up with this, and like how they do this clandestinely? I mean, it's so ridiculous, because these are historical things that have already been done in terms of experimentation on these levels, whether it was the Nazis, and then they brought over the Nazi scientists in Operation Paperclip, to the atom bomb into the Manhattan Project, which literally, in terms of modern money, was like a $30 billion project, adjusting for inflation. 100,000 people worked on it relatively. They just left hand didn't know what right hand was doing. So all those things are completely within reason, as far as I'm concerned, for a means to scare people into that level of control. And that's part of the plot here. So
wow, yeah, that's a lot of stuff, and we can unpack some of that. But yeah, I think that you're right, that they do want to have that level of control, because then they can have unlimited spending and unlimited control. There's a trend towards centralization, and I think in the schools especially, they train you that government is the only means of having a solution to any problem, and that the free market, if they mention it at all, is a great evil, and it's causing all the problems.
Right. And something important too, to piggyback on that, is to remember that government, in terms of the artifice of what you see in the superficial, those are not really the people in power in terms of who actually has the real meaningful power behind the scenes, because the people who are put there, are funded and manipulated into those positions by those who want to stay abstracted from it, so that they themselves are not under scrutiny, right? Like the people who actually have the genetic, that is the historical family bloodlines of real power behind the scenes, they don't want to themselves be exposed. They want to, do their thing behind the scenes and manipulate what is in front. So people think, of course, oh, it's fair, right? Social contract, you vote, right? People think they're bought into the system, but in reality, what actually goes on behind the scenes is largely in favor of and at the beckoning of other people who have much greater historical power than those who are just fleetingly elected.
So what we do see is basically Plato's cave, right? With the images on the cave wall. All right, Robert, do you have has that sparked anything for you? That was quite a little trip, sort of related to the movie.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of when I would listen to Jones back in the day, and he'd talk about things like the Bilderberg Group and the Council on Foreign Relations and the Rockefellers and who was that big banking family in England?
Rothschilds.
The Rothschilds. Thank you. Yeah. I guess there's still some of those people around.
Oh yeah.
So
they still have power.
I don't know to what level they still have that kind of power,
huge.
but for sure they still exist.
Oh yeah. It's all real. Like all this stuff's real. Like, you know, the Illuminati was real. Adam Weishaupt's secret society. Freemasonry is real. It's a real secret society. George Washington wrote about that. And there was a letter, you can go look it up on, you know, the Congressional Archives, of him talking with someone from England concerned that the Illuminati had infiltrated Freemasonry. And I think it did based on the evidence that I've seen. So, you know, these types of secret societies, you know, are, you know, tried and true known things as far as power structures. And once you start to unveil those power structures and understand how those things work and the psychology behind it and the history behind it, then everything else starts to make a lot more sense. You know what I mean? You start to be like, oh, that's why there's this pyramid with an eye and New World Order on the back of a dollar bill, right? Like that wasn't just placed there because some art major, you know, decided to like randomly put this thing there, right? They're putting down what it is that's their in-group signaling. They're showing, oh, okay, well, this is the people who are actually in control of this. So
basically what you're saying is find us when you wake up. Plenty more down the rabbit trail.
Oh yeah, it's a big one, but it's all very easy to find, fortunately, and that's because I think in many ways, you know, some of the people who have been a part of that got bold, like Carol Quigley and others who've, you know, covered it. Like, you know, you mentioned the Bilderberg Group. Daniel Estlin has a great book on that, talking about people that slipped him stuff from those meetings, like, you know, little memos and stuff. And, you know, Bohemian Grove, you know, their little meetings there and worshiping Moloch and stuff like that. It's all real stuff. It's real. It's just that to a lot of people, it's shocking. But to me, it's no different than any type of organization for power, right? You don't think it's weird. I mean, of course, unless you're just always atheist or something like that, you don't think it's weird that like there's Catholics out there and that there's a Vatican has secret, you know, Jesuit, you know, priests/armed guards in Vatican City, right? But that is still its whole psychology and worldview and secret society, you know, within there. And there's that for all kinds of things. There's many different power groups that compete against each other, but sometimes they have unified interests through a larger organization. Yeah.
All right. Well said.
All right.
Depends how deep you want to go. I mean, if your audience is ready, but some people are not ready for those pills, you know, it's like the Matrix, right? They resist it. They're like in the, you know, the Edge of Tomorrow, right? They're like, what? You're crazy. What are you talking about? You're like, no, I've seen this before. I've seen this pattern. This is what happened. But.
Right. And I liked to tie it back to the movie a little bit. I liked how when he started telling people things that they couldn't possibly know about them, they're like, what is this? You know, some kind of parlor trick. I'm not going to fall for this. Like he was, you know, able to read their tells or something like that, like a fortune teller might do, reading a crystal ball. One other thing I thought that was kind of interesting and somewhat of an admission was the Tom Cruise character. If I recall, he was conscripted into this and he had run an advertising agency and he was able to sort of select what branch he would go into. So he went into media because it would keep him off the battlefield. And I think there's a little bit of honesty to that people will navigate whatever system they have available to them for their own self-preservation. And of course, he got kind of thrown under the bus as a result of that, with the general putting him out on the front lines. And he even tried to, I guess, bribe him or blackmail him. And then he had him arrested as a result of that. And that almost seems like worse than whatever Trump allegedly did, or actually what Biden did and Trump was like trying to find out about, that we're finding with this impeachment stuff, which I've barely been following. But from what I understand, it's Biden actually doing crimes and Trump asking someone to look into it and now Trump's apparently in trouble for Biden's crimes. It's quite the three-card Monte going on there.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean that's definitely the nature of the state, is people trying to manipulate others and find their own kind of tyrannical favoritism within the system. So the incentives are there for that.
And I think we lost Robert for just a moment. I think he has a bad connection.
Maybe he's going to come back to us in a cycle, and then it's going to repeat.
He's going to time loop, and we're going to start everything over again.
Yeah.
And he'll be baptized and born again, which I really enjoyed the Bill Paxton character as the drill sergeant. Related to the movie, they had like kind of this rough script, and they were doing rewrites and changing things around the entire time. And so a lot of the stuff that he did was really just ad-libbed. And I felt that the performance was really good on his part, as well as Tom Cruise. I don't know if you've seen any behind-the-scenes stuff with Tom Cruise when he's talking about what, he does his own stunts for the most part. And then Robert is back. Here he is. Robert, one of the hardest working men in the Actual Anarchy podcast here, is back with us again. We were just talking about how much effort Tom Cruise puts into his movies, doing his own stunts. And I was watching the behind the scenes for this one, and it's crazy how hard he works at this stuff. Like, he's really, really pushing himself. And to get more takes in the day, they only have a certain amount of time with daylight and everything when they're shooting outdoors. So rather than what they had planned was like, they're going to run the march or the jogging, the running they're doing as a unit in the scenes they play over and over again, where he escapes and he rolls under one of the big trucks. And the first time he does, he fails and gets run over by the truck. Well, they had to, of course, shoot that scene many, many times. And rather than take the little golf carts to go like the quarter mile back to the start, Tom Cruise at age 50 or 51 would sprint back. And because he did that, everyone else did. And that's so they could get more takes in the day. So he's very committed to his craft. And it's quite a sight to behold when you look at the behind the scenes stuff, that how hard he works at this. And in fact, he had just wrapped on Oblivion, which is a kind of a similar feel for that movie. It's the Morgan Freeman one where he's like flying over Iceland and stuff, going into Collateral. So, I mean, he's like a nonstop dude, and he does great work, I think, ever since the old Risky Business.
No, the guy's a machine. He's been putting himself into his movies and giving it all. And he seems like he's having a really good time for decades now. And he's an old man, and he's still doing crazy stunts. I mean, the craziest of which he does in Mission Impossible movies. But yeah, in this film, he seems to put himself into it. He's not like a Bruce Willis where he's like phoning it in. Like, I don't know. I haven't seen The Mummy or whatever. What was that? Was it Dracula or The Mummy or whatever he did? Where supposedly it's really terrible, but I'm sure he was still decent in it. I don't know.
Yeah, and speaking of sequels, they are actually making a sequel to this, and it's going to be more of a prequel where we see the Emily Blunt character become the Angel of Verdun, where she's got the helicopter blade and she's like chopping up the aliens, because she was the first one who had gone through this time loop. Like, she had acquired this power by getting the alien blood on her. And it's sort of just like presented as she's so amazing in the opening to this movie. But it's because she had that power and she had relived that day multiple times and got really, really good at it. And so that was the time loop that like continued on into the start of this movie. But then she lost that ability, and then Tom Cruise got that ability. So then he got really good. And I thought that Tom Cruise, he played that really well. Like in the initial first couple of times he's going through the motions through the battle scene, he really does look lost and like confused and not sure what to do. I mean, you can see all that on him. And then later on, he's fucking badass. I mean, he's just like, he knows where everything's going to be. He knows exactly what to do. And it's believable. So dude's amazing.
Yeah, he's playing a video game on God mode that he knows where everything is and what's going to happen. He's like playing it like a programmer would, for sure. But what would have happened if, like, more than one character has this power? Like, if Emily Blunt's character still had it, would he just be going along and then all of a sudden the day would have reset, even though he didn't die? Because she would have died?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can't ask these types of questions because then the whole thing
I can't.
collapses on itself. So
Yes,
we
I
have to, only one can have the power at any given time. And in fact, that's what I thought was happening because apparently the aliens were able to have this power. And so they could repel this invasion. But then because Tom Cruise had the power, then they didn't seem to be able to counteract him. So maybe
why didn't they just reset the day to when before he had the power so that their alpha was still alive?
Yeah, see, you're breaking the movie, Robert.
Yeah, I'll break the shit out of it. I don't care. I didn't make this movie.
That only one entity can have this power because there's only. I mean, granted,
no, that's not true. Not according to the movie. All the alphas have the power, and the big mother brain has the power.
But weren't they all connected?
They're all connected?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think theoretically they lost the power while Blunt had it, and then had it again, and then Cruise got it, and then they didn't have it until Cruise died, and then he was down to his last token, his last life, to do the Louvre attack.
Okay, I'm going to read a YouTube comment to a video that was talking all about the problems of the Edge of Tomorrow. And you guys tell me if you think this makes sense. I think it does, but maybe we can talk about it a little bit. Okay, so the Omega is a single time-controlling entity. The alphas are the extension of itself, and the mimics are its army. An alpha dies, the Omega resets the day. So when the alpha's blood gets on Cage, it reads that entity as another alpha. Therefore, he retained his life and was sent back to the previous day. So this means that when the Omega's blood gets on him, he doesn't just also kill the alpha and reset the day. He became the Omega a moment before his death. And when the alpha died, he reset the day. So this is at the end of the movie. When the Omega's blood gets on him, like at the end when he's like throwing the grenades and he's swimming and whatever, he doesn't just kill the alpha and reset the day. He became the mother brain character a moment before his death. And then when the alpha died, Tom Cruise, reset the day. This is why he was still alive and the Omega wasn't. He almost died after killing the Omega, but when he retained the Omega's abilities and then the alpha died, he reset the day as the Omega. So at the end of the movie, he is this Omega time-controlling entity, but he doesn't have any alphas anymore. So then he can't reset time.
All right, I've gone cross-eyed.
I know it's a little bit confusing, but this is internal logic of a movie is important, unless you just want to turn your brain off and have fun and watch a movie, which is fine.
Yeah. Now, per my understanding, I think Jack, you were of the same opinion that only one entity could have this power at a time, and that the aliens were all technically one collective entity. And once they lost it, Tom Cruise had it, but then he had lost it as well. And so he was down to his last opportunity when he did the mission over the Louvre. And then when he blew up the Omega with the grenade, then he reacquired this power.
I think he just became an operating Thetan in Scientology. That's what happened, probably.
He's on the cruise ship. But wouldn't Cruise then have to die to not reset that day? To end the time loop? Like, how does that work?
No, that's what this comment's talking about.
Right. No. It's if he doesn't die, then the day is like written in pen instead of pencil. That's right. So like when he's on the recovery table, he's strapped down and like it looks like he's gonna live that 24-hour period or whatever, then that's gonna lock in that timeline. So whatever, Greenwich Mean Time apparently is the deciding factor. It's like, international dateline of committed to the history books. The timeline of events will actually have happened and retain. Apparently, if he's alive, then whatever that day is. So it's only days where he dies where he's going to repeat that day. Is that
or an alpha dies?
The working theory? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I think if you think about it too much, it becomes a bit of a mess unless you can like firmly believe in something and then it makes sense. But I don't know. It's still fun.
Probably have to watch it again to like try to get the nuance, but I know that I won't. I'm not that committed. I had a good time watching this. It's like a popcorn flick movie.
Yeah.
And if I can shift our topic just a little bit, when he meets one of the drill sergeant guys, I don't know if it's the Paxton characters, that he's an American. He goes, "No, sir, I'm from Kentucky." I thought that was brilliant because he's like, I'm not an American. I can probably be better. Smaller states, smaller
states, more competition between states. Sure.
Maybe.
That's why so many people are fleeing California right now.
You can have a lot of little tyranny. That's also a possibility.
Right. Like we're staying in Virginia, right?
Yeah.
And apparently it's just little pockets of Virginia that happen to be populous that are kind of pushing that over the entire rest of the state.
And more so just the money that was funneled in there from outside interests. Every town threw a couple million, Bloomberg ran it through them. So they got an off year and they knew they could, flush it up, get some activism going on. Like the governor, shook a bunch of hands and stuff like that. They do a lot of doors. So yeah, it's just, you gotta take action like Tom Cruise. You gotta run.
All about that action, baby. I also liked when Cruise starts getting better at things. He almost does similar to Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. A lot of parallels. He tries going around saving people, saving the guy who's going to get hit by the landing craft or the drop ship, and then eventually, after however many hundreds of additional times he goes through this, he stops caring at all. He just doesn't give a fuck. He's like, that guy, he gets killed every time I go through here, so I'm just gonna forget about it and just move on. And that's when he gets super badass, and just doesn't give a fuck anymore. But I wonder how many times he would have had to go through these events to get that good at them, because every time he changes something, it's going to alter anything from that change, right? So wouldn't that also be a bit of a glitch in the matrix here?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Anything beyond that would then be changed.
Yeah, the movie kind of takes the day of the invasion as this set of events, not taking into account the different things that Tom Cruise does each time, for sure. Like the mimics are going to react to the things that he does, to the changes in what they see. So yeah, it's an incomprehensible set of variables that nobody could actually predict.
Right. And then when he was trying to convey to the Emily Blunt character, when they were finally teamed up and she understood he has the power now, and she knew that it was the same power that she had, so she knew kind of the ins and outs of how it was allegedly supposed to work. He was rehearsing her the steps, and then on the battlefield, she would go through and do them based on what he had told her. So he's going to tell her every event. Like when they finally start getting further along and they're going to the farmhouse and finding the helicopter and all that stuff, how many hours did he have to tell her, okay, at 12:01 and 42 seconds, you're going to dive to the left because there's going to be a mimic who's going to jump in from the right. How many times would you have to go through that? And then every time for her, it would be as if it was the first time. So there's no way in hell that he would ever be able to transmit that amount of information to her in a way that she would retain it in a useful way.
Yeah, she'd have to be some sort of computer. There's no way she could remember all that, for sure. You have to suspend your disbelief a lot during this movie, but you can.
All right,
Do it.
I'm starting to hate this movie now. Definitely a popcorn flick. Well, let's see. That was pretty much most of my notes. So, Jack, is there anything that you wanted to bring up that you found interesting or had a note on?
Not anything in particular we haven't already covered. I did like the idea that he would even kill himself to ensure that he can keep on with the mission by drowning himself. I thought that was a cool concept. Just that he was that committed that he would be willing to off himself for the sake of ensuring that he didn't get caught. I thought that was fun to show on screen.
Now, walk me through that.
Dedication.
You mean in real life, as an actor, he was under the water and willing to die for the movie? Or are you saying his character was
His character.
Because that was when he was on his last life, right? Because he knew he no longer had the power. But he also figured that none of them were getting out of there. But he was willing to make the sacrifice to stop the aliens.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Any notes from you, Robert, that we haven't covered already?
I got all kinds of notes, but I don't know how much into the weeds we want to get into them. I'll just read them off, and people can react if they like them. So, initially, Tom Cruise is this propagandist guy. He's trying to get people to join up the fight. I don't know how necessary his position would be if a group of aliens really were invading the whole planet. I think recruits would come. I mean, during World War II, when there was the Pearl Harbor, men signed up in droves just when it was the Japanese that were attacking. If aliens came from outer space, I think they would have no problem with the number of recruits. But anyway, we'll take the movie for what it is and we'll accept it. So he's this talented advertising guy who can really get people to join up. And so this commanding officer, he's like, well, I'm going to send you to the beach. And I don't care if you get killed. You're just a pawn to me. It's fine. But then Cruise is like, but I am far more valuable to you to get more recruits, get more men into the fight. Why would you want to throw me away like that? You don't want to take advantage of the division of labor. And the commander's just like, whatever, I don't care. You're pissing me off. You're going down. I'm using you in the least efficient way. You're clearly not combat oriented. And I'm just going to chuck you in to the meat grinder, which is basically what happened in World War I. So this is kind of a fun allegory for that, where generals would just throw waves of humanity at each other into the teeth of the machine guns to be essentially mowed down. So that's fun. I mean, I put here, military does with its slaves what it likes. So they don't care what your particular talents are. They're a killing organization, and they care how much killing they can get out of you. So that's what I have for that.
Yeah, no, I'd like to respond to that because it's kind of an interesting thing. Because Jack, you brought up something earlier on about why people like to drive towards this one world government kind of solution to war without seemingly realizing that twice as many people have been murdered by their own governments than by war in the 20th century. So it's not like you're really improving the situation all that much. You're probably actually making it far more dangerous for people.
Well, and it reminds me of the Hero movie we did, Daniel. Remember where it's like the story of the first Chinese emperor, where he's trying to unite China so that they can have peace finally, right?
Right, yeah. We kill enough people, we'll have peace.
Yeah, you kill enough people, you unite China, and you'll have peace, and no one will ever resent you for killing all those people, and everybody will be super happy, right?
The blowback hadn't been invented yet.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't a thing yet.
Gotcha.
Well, it's certainly true. Those who are at the helm of those things want as many people dead as possible. So they want basically anyone who's superfluous to their plans to be offed and to reduce the global population down to a manageable number, where those who are the more technocratic or engineering scientists group provide the needs for those who are in elite power, and they can limit what people can do or say or how they can rebel. So that's, in order to get to that, you need kind of a full take spying system and mind control. And so you got that NSA or Tempora in England, and social credit system in China, and their compulsory schools and things like that. So things are careening toward that end, toward totalitarianism and controlling everyone, from cradle to grave. And certainly that kind of control that the Chinese government has rolled out is nearing implementation here as well. So.
Right. Yeah. That sounds a lot like the Georgia Guidestone stuff as well. Getting it down to, what is it, 7 million people, something like that?
Yeah, 500 million.
Mm-hmm. 500 million. Okay, I thought it was less than that.
Generous.
Haven't read them lately.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
And then, Robert, to your point about the division of labor and like misallocating the resource, because Tom Cruise actually was valuable in his capacity for what he was doing, because as depicted in the movie, this is a period of time where the aliens are winning, significantly, and demoralizing the character of people willing to go and fight because they're getting just slaughtered, until the Angel of Verdun actually has a victory, which turns out to have been a trap. It was to lead the humans into believing that they had a chance so that they would throw everything they had at the Normandy invasion. So this was a...
I take issue with that statement, by the way, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't know the particular name of this trap, but it's like to feign a loss so that then they'll induce them
to
overcommit and then just annihilate them and wipe them off the face of the earth. But I feel like the general just kind of had a vindictive streak against the Tom Cruise character because he just didn't like him for whatever reason. So he's like, all right, I'm going to go sentence you to death, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but to the Angel of Verdun situation. So she says that they were allowed to win at Verdun. So it was in the aliens' plan for the humans to win at Verdun, right? Am I wrong? I think this is correct, right? This is what the movie tells us.
That's the trap.
Okay, so the only way the humans won is that Emily Blunt got this power and she was able to run the same damn fight 1,000 times, and then they were able to win. So how was that part of the alien plan? Why not just plan it to lose? Why plan it to have her get the power and then have to do it 1,000 times and then win? That makes no sense to me.
So you're just basically saying that they took extra steps. Like, why not just throw the fight? Go down in the 8th or whatever, like Bruce Willis in Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, why make it so convincing? I mean, maybe it's a super master plan.
Why let Emily Blunt get so skilled? Because that is their undoing eventually.
It's part of their undoing.
She's highly skilled, even though she hasn't relived the moments with the Tom Cruise character in a way that she would remember. In a way, this is like you and me, as if we were going through the motions of, the same thing over and over again, like doing this show 108 times now.
Yeah, you'd think we'd be good at it by now.
But you actually remember stuff and I don't. So in effect, you're getting better and better by repetition and doing it over again. And I have no memory. I don't recollect anything.
Oh, okay. Right. Well, every day's a new day for you. So it's good.
Everything's new to me all the time.
Yeah. I'm Robert, by the way.
I think we talked that to death. How about one more note, and then we'll start winding this down because we're almost to an hour here.
Well, the whole mother brain ability to go back in time. I mean, the 1 day thing is completely arbitrary. Why didn't she go back into a time when humans couldn't fight back? The armored power suits look neither armored nor powered. They're super vulnerable and they move slowly. I mean, they've got a lot of weaponry, but these mimics are like super fast. Like they'll just like be in the sand and then you'll be dead. It seems like they're super inefficient way to fight these things. I mean, if this is the best humanity can come up with, is to plant a human being in this like lump of metal and then just like sit there and get killed. It looks kind of stupid.
Maybe they were taken after Ripley in her exosuit, like, well, she won, so, why don't we do this? And I guess that the U.S. military is actually working on things like that, where you can marry up a soldier with some modifications like this to be more effective. I think that it's part of like the Japanese anime that this is based on, sort of like the Akira type stuff and mech warrior type stuff, to where you are more powered than you would otherwise be. I mean, they would just get totally slaughtered if they were just like wearing, like the Space Force has camo, apparently, because you can't be seen in space with camo. But yeah, if you were just wearing like fatigues, you would just stand even less of a chance.
It reminded me of the power battle suits in the Matrix, the last Matrix movie. Remember that?
I don't remember that. I've blocked that from my memory.
Okay, good. Yeah, that movie doesn't exist. Okay, never mind then. But they're these big clunky suits where they're fighting a really fast enemy. They can just poke a guy in the brain and they're dead.
Oh, you're talking about in the Zion, like the underground? Yeah. Okay.
The real world.
Now recall that.
In the real world, Daniel. Come on, wake up. Take the pill.
No, yeah. You've got a point. Yeah. But I think it's another, compared to what otherwise could they have had?
They could have had nothing. They could have just had guns and ran in there. You'd have been faster. You could direct your fire better. You could have firing lines.
Yeah, did you know that in the movie that they actually made these things and people wore them and they weighed like 80 or 90 pounds?
Yeah, shitty. And they had to like use them like puppets with big cranes and shit. Makes them look stupid. I mean, I still like the movie, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't look like, super power suit until like maybe back the middle of the movie when Tom Cruise is like running around and just shooting everything like he's Neo in the Matrix.
But yeah,
before that,
he's God moding it up.
Well, yeah, and I mean, here's another stupid thing. Why? I mean, it looks like, okay, real soldiers in real life were sent to Iraq without even body armor. Like they had to like do Kickstarters and GoFundMes just to get body armor. But in this movie, they'll take some scrub who doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground about fighting and throw him in this, $500,000 suit. And then it don't even teach him how to take the safety off. I mean, come on.
There's many plot holes.
Yeah, I did appreciate there was a scene where they're actually showing the suits being made. So at least we get a glimpse into things being manufactured and created, which you don't normally see in a movie. Like we were talking about in The Village, how this very isolated, insulated village that apparently has no trade with anyone has all these material goods of the era, like the late 1800s. Even that would be far too abundant for such a small community to be able to manufacture on their own. That was one of your plot holes in that one.
It's my main criticism of that movie, economic criticism of that movie anyway. Still liked it. Good movie.
And that was a good discussion.
Same with this one.
Yes, this was a good movie. Why don't we get a final summary and review? And why don't you start us off there, Robert? All
right. So The Day After The Edge of Tomorrow is a pretty stinking good Tom Cruise popcorn flick. It's got a good hero's journey narrative where you take some scrub that doesn't want to be even in the fight, and then by the end of the movie, he's the super hardcore action hero badass. But at least he realizes he's sacrifice everything for the fight and to win and whatever. It's basically a good narrative. I mean, you actually have a beginning, a middle, and an end in this movie. It's kind of novel, where you actually have a character that grows and changes over time. It's becoming more and more rare in films these days. But it's nice to see. And for all its flaws, I still really enjoyed it. I can hand wave away all my issues and just sit back. I remember watching this the first time many years ago, back when it first came out, probably, or shortly thereafter, and just totally enjoying it, not really thinking about it. But now that I got to do this for this podcast that I have to continually do over and over again, you point out the flaws, and it's fine though. It's fine. It's good. It's a 7 point. I'm not going to go with a 7.5. I'm going to go with a 7.4. Yep.
All right, that makes it seem more precise, right? Because you're not like on a halfway increment, something like that. So it seems more legitimate this way.
Yeah, 7.4. So that's exactly what it is.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Jack. Your final summary and your score 1 to 10, and you can go even 2 decimal points deep.
I'll give it a 7.49. Yeah. No, it's an entertaining movie. I think the character development definitely is much better than many action movies today. I mean, it definitely falls into that zone where a lot of the films of that time, I think, were doing a lot of gamer play style things, like, kind of mimicking video games in a sense. I think that was unique during that time, like the Doom stuff and this or that. So I think it's an entertaining movie. There's plot holes, of course, but I think it's a solid, fun thing to watch. I don't think your worldview will be radically challenged, but you'll be thoroughly entertained.
All right, and that was a 7.49, so very
7.49.
Particular. Okay,
so granular.
All right. Well, I also enjoyed this movie, as I said at the very beginning. Though, based on our discussion, I might actually demerit it just a little bit. But Tom Cruise, of course, is still very strong, especially when you watch the behind the scenes. You see how much effort he puts into this stuff. I think that this is a movie that you can enjoy so long as you don't overthink it. Like, I thought that the premise was actually very interesting. You're playing with time and like moving back and forth and like improving and getting really good at something. But then as we have kind of parsed it apart, you're like, okay, well, actually none of this, even within the structure of the logic of the movie, could actually function. So unfortunately, it kind of falls down on that. But Cruise was great. Blunt is good. I enjoyed the Bill Paxton character, who he sadly died just a few years after this was made. But I do look forward to seeing the next one that they're going to come out with. They're doing the sequel, and it's going to be the same director. I enjoyed Doug Liman's Swingers, and he's done some other fine work, and I look forward to additional stuff coming from him. And I'm going to go with the 6.923, so even more granular, so therefore it is far more significant. And speaking of significant things, this was our Groundhog Day episode. Next week, we're going to give a little bit of a taste for the audience who have heard us mention Kathleen Turner Overdrive, which is the bonus content that we offer for people, and it's available as Patreon content. So go to lastnighters.com/Patreon, and you can find some of our previous Kathleen Turner Overdrives. But we're going to go to the movie that brings that entire concept to fruition, and that is High Fidelity with Nicky P. And he has his new show. It is Peace Freqs, and Freqs is Freqs, like frequencies. And they were formerly known as Sounds Like Liberty. We've had him on for Dark City, and there was something else. I don't quite recall it at the moment, but I will put it on our show notes page, and we will have him on next week for that, for High Fidelity. So, Jack, thanks again for being our guest. I hope you can stick around for a little bit of the Kathleen Turner Overdrive that I just mentioned. And if you could please remind people where they can find your latest project and your comic.
Absolutely. No, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun. And again, if you want to check out the latest and greatest voluntarist issue, of course, it has a beautiful spread in there. You can basically hang that and put it on your wall and frame it, right? It's a lot of fun at volcomic.com. It's VOLCOMIC, volcomic.com. And then Red Flag Reality is the big thing I'm working on this year. So that's redflagreality.com, pushing back against the gun grabbers. So I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and I'm excited for more things for y'all.
All right. Thank you for that. And Robert, why don't you tell the audience what they win if they choose different ways of supporting us? And then we will wrap this up.
Oh man, all the virtual hugs that get all kind of saucy and dirty if you really want to get friendly with us and support us in every way you can think of. I mean, any way. I mean, I'm open to new ideas. I like to try new things. I mean, hit me up.
All right, good enough. And
Daniel.
lastnighters.com/Patreon is one of the ways you can support us. And you can also subscribe on the old YouTube, give us a rating and review on iTunes and or Apple Podcasts, whatever they're calling it these days. And of course, you can find us at lastnighters.com and the Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction. And we will say good night from last night, everyone.